Stations across the land, joepags.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email. It's all right there, plus NewsMaxTV. It's the Joe Pags Show. Glad to have you here. Really glad to have back author and geologist Gregory Wrightstone. His book is called Inconvenient Facts. Greg, how are you?
Oh, really good. Thanks for having me back on, Joe.
It's always an absolute pleasure to have you back on. I'm going to adjust the volume just a little bit. Yeah, last time we had you on, people were very, very appreciative. They got a hold of me almost immediately and said, we love what the guy had to say. Thank you. We finally have the book that we can refer to. We finally have a resource, because what happens is, especially now, holiday time, if you're going to talk politics, people are ingrained in their heads and in their hearts that climate change is happening, my SUV is causing it, having babies is causing it, cow farts are causing it, and we must stop it right now. And then when you say, well, that's really not true if you look at the numbers, they'll say, well, cite your source. Well, now they can. They can cite Gregory Wrightstone. And I guess a testament to that is you're seeing books move.
Oh, my goodness, yes. The book was actually published 2 years ago. And just as recently as last week, it was the #1 bestseller on Amazon in a couple categories.
Yeah, it should be.
And we've got the smartphone app that has the information in the book, so you can't carry the book around with you all the time. But you got your smartphone with you everywhere, so you can have that information right in the palm of your hand.
And Apple and Google Play are allowing that to exist, really?
Well, you might recall Apple took it off the air back in March and took it off the App Store.
Yeah.
It was the #1 story on Drudge because it blew up.
Right.
There's Apple weaponizing the App Store to take this climate skeptic app off and we finally got it back up 3 months ago. So
and again, it's a great resource. I had a guy call in the other day. He said he's a conservative from Minnesota. And there are conservatives in Minnesota. In fact, geographically, it's a red state. It's a blue state because of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the big, urban centers. They tend to vote Democrat. They've got all the population. But the guy said, I'm a conservative, but aren't you worried, Pags? But aren't you worried about climate change? And NASA says that in the past 20 or 30 years, we've quadrupled or 100 times the amount of CO2 that's in the atmosphere. And because of that, aren't you concerned even as a conservative? They always try to play the heartstrings. Now, I'm not sure if the guy's a conservative or not. My reaction to him was what my typical reaction is. What was the temperature where you are 1,500 years ago? What's the temperature change? How did the glaciers melt 3 times? Tell me how that happened. We had 3 ice ages. And he doesn't really have an answer other than, but NASA says, and isn't NASA smarter than you, Pags? What would your reaction be to a guy like that?
Oh, boy, there's so many ways to attack that. Number one, they're worried about 130 part per million increase in CO2 since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
Well, cut me a break. We've decreased CO2 by over 2,000 parts per million dating back to when the first flowering plants arose on Earth. We've lost 2,000. Now they're worried about 130 parts per million. And the other thing is, that I'm a huge, huge, huge proponent of an Earth that's thriving and prospering.
We all are. We all are.
Yeah.
We live on it. Yeah.
But the Earth is doing that. The Earth is, if we look at actually what's happening today, we see by just about every metric you can look at, humanity, Earth's ecosystems, the planet, it's prospering and thriving. The Earth is thriving and greening, vegetation's increasing, and it's due to modest increase in temperature, and this increase in CO2 is fueling plant growth. It's probably, I consider it, the biggest untold story of the late 20th and early 21st centuries is this Earth that's thriving and prospering. They're looking at 50 or 80 years in the future using failed climate models, and they're going to say, oh my God, we can't, oh my God, we have to stop it from warming. But historically, and that's what my second book I'm getting into right now, is the strong relationship between the rise and fall of temperature and the rise and fall of civilizations, that every time and whenever it got warmer, civilizations thrived, Earth thrived. It was the cold periods, like we've talked many times before about this, that each cold period was accompanied by famine, pestilence, mass depopulation. It's just opposite of what they're telling us.
So warming actually is helpful to humans. Imagine that. It's Gregory Wrightstone. Inconvenient Facts is the name of the book. Inconvenient Facts. Go and get it now at all the normal sources where you would get a book. Also download the app on Google Play or the App Store. Is it just called Inconvenient Facts app, or what is it called?
Yeah, you can search for inconvenient facts or just inconvenient app. It'll pop right up. We're approaching 50,000 downloads,
Nice.
so it's been a hugely popular app, and we're still seeing, probably 300 or 400 downloads a week.
Right.
Are still, and so it's been hugely popular in the iPhone. You can actually take a picture using this app, and it'll have a little I Heart CO2 banner at the bottom of the photo. So you can take a picture and tweak your nephew from majoring in sustainable development, send him a picture of your backyard and the greenery.
It's Gregory Wrightstone, Inconvenient Facts is the name of the book. You'll be proud of me. In that conversation with the guy from Minnesota, I asked him a simple question. Do you think they ever had citrus groves in England or grew some sort of fruit there? And he didn't know what to say. And obviously my point was the point that you've made many times. That used to be a place where that happened. How can that happen if you didn't have a more of a subtropical climate? Almost like a Florida, one would imagine, right?
And it's fascinating as I'm diving into the research of this historical documentation. They were growing a crop called millet. It's a grain. Millet. It's like wheat, or you don't hear about it much. There's a lot grown, but it's only grown in tropical or semi-tropical areas. They were growing it in Scandinavia, and that's the thing. If we look at, people get that. If you tell them that they're growing this semi-tropical product in Scandinavia, or that they were growing citrus in the north of England, or that
they call you nuts. They'll call you crazy.
But it's documented historically. Their Vikings are still buried deeply in the permafrost in Greenland. When you talk to people like that, they get that. They understand. If we get twisted off talking about deuterium isotopes
and 130 parts per million and all this other stuff. Right. Yeah, I mean, that's confusing. So no, that's real research, real information that is true because you've got the proof, which I love. He is the guy that I turn to every time for climate change stuff is Gregory Wrightstone, Inconvenient Facts, go and get it. China's appetite for coal power returns despite climate pledge. China was never going to do anything. In the Paris Accord, you know as well as I do, China didn't have to do squat for 30 years. The only country that had to do anything was us. We had to change everything that we do because we're too prosperous, too rich, we're too mean, we're no good, we enslaved everybody, we took the land from the indigenous people. We have to be the greater evil on earth, while China and Iran and India didn't have to do anything, Greg. And now we're seeing, even though China said that it would eventually do something, it's really not, is it?
No, it's not. If we look at the non-China world, we've reduced coal consumption by about I think it's like 8 million tons, where they've increased it in China by 30 plus million.
And nobody
tons.
says anything. Nobody says a word about it. Like they're afraid of China. It's weird.
So Donald Trump and Premier Xi of China have something in common. They both want inexpensive, abundant, reliable energy for their countries.
Right.
Here, Donald Trump got us out of things that were going to be harmful to our country. Over in China, they're going way further, and they're actually looking at, he says, we want more coal. We want more coal-fired electric because it's reliable, abundant, and affordable. And that's how you drive economic growth. Donald Trump gets it. Premier Xi gets it. They're just, they're looking at it from different perspectives.
Yeah.
Donald Trump doesn't want to hurt us, and the premier over there says, I want our economy to explode.
And by the way, we're using more liquefied natural gas. Here we're doing resources that are renewable. We're doing so-called clean coal. Over there, it's just the old standard. Let's do coal.
Yeah, it is. And if you look at that, they keep opening up coal mines. I separate India from China because India is a developing nation. It's a true developing nation. And there are 600 million people live in destitute poverty over there. Right. I've been there. I've seen it.
Right.
And it's not a pretty sight. And Prime Minister Modi in India, again, he says, I'm going to lift my people up out of poverty, and we're going to do it using all of the above energy sources. They're doing windmills, they're doing wind, they're doing solar, but they're also really doubling down on coal.
Yeah.
Because I was there during the monsoon. And you can't do solar for 3 or 4 months a year. It just rains every day.
Right.
So you're not going to do solar. Wind doesn't work during the monsoons because a lot of the times the wind is too high to run those. So he says we have to build these coal-fired plants to provide complete electrification for the people. And he's going to do that he's doing it to to save. We've talked, I believe the last time I was on, we talked about the 4 million people that die in early death because they're cooking over wood or dried dung in their homes.
Right.
They're inhaling it to get lung cancer, emphysema. It's bad.
Yeah.
And he can stop that. Those are 4 million lives that could be easily spared. So I'm a big proponent of using all of our resources.
Well, why not? I mean, and I don't understand why we wouldn't. And again, Greg, as you know, we talk about this every single time we have you on, we, for some reason, are the greater evil. Let's go to Greta Thunberg. And by the way, get this book, Inconvenient Facts, by Gregory Wrightstone. I don't have a whole lot of time left, so we want to do this quickly. But Greta Thunberg, the now 16-year-old girl who keeps on skipping school, she should go to school. She thinks she knows something about climate change, although I'm starting to think she doesn't think she knows anything. I think it's whoever's given her the information and asking her to read it. She read this speech about how we're ruining her future. She has no future. We're ending people's lives. We're killing people every day. And we're no good. We're bad. And she was basically directing it at us here in the United States. Didn't mention China. Didn't mention India. Is not going to. She was on a panel where she was asked some impromptu questions. And I think the question was as simple as this. Greta, can you tell people your age why you're doing this? She hesitated. Well, I'm just sort of going to give you kind of what she did. She hesitated, looked around, and said, I just think it's the right thing to do. Anybody else want to comment on this? I mean, Greg, she couldn't answer that with a paragraph. So it's more evident to me now that she might be somebody who is being horribly used by her parents, and maybe they should be investigated. But here's a young girl who doesn't really know anything about anything, and the world community is starting to ignore her, and that's frustrating her as well, as she showed up in Portugal or something recently. What are your thoughts about her role in this, and are you surprised that it's this fast that she's sort of being forgotten about? People aren't paying attention to her anymore.
Yeah, and actually this week, I think it was yesterday, she said something I agreed with. She says, we're not making a difference. I'm doing all this and nothing's happening. Well, yeah, I could have told her that. Even if they did what they wanted her to do, it wasn't going to affect the Earth's temperature.
Of course not.
And she's...
They're using her as a puppet. I feel bad for her.
They are. And the young lady has a lot of issues we don't need to go into.
Right.
And she's been exploited. That clip that you just referenced was a glaring example. If she doesn't have it scripted in front of her and she hasn't memorized it like the actor that she is,
right,
she can't talk about it because she doesn't have this depth of knowledge. She needs to go back to school. She knows a lot of things that are wrong. And she needs to unlearn some of those, and then maybe she should learn some true climate change facts.
I'll get her the book. We'll get her the book, Greg. That's a great segue. It's Inconvenient Facts. Inconvenient Facts. His name is Gregory Wrightstone. He's a geologist. He has this all sourced and written down and ready to go. So make sure you get the app, Inconvenient Facts, or the Inconvenient app, and also get the book. And it's at all the sources that you normally would get them. Amazon is a great place to go to online. Inconvenient Facts, Gregory Wrightstone. Thanks a million, Greg. Always appreciate you.
Make a great Christmas gift.
Yeah, it certainly would. We're back after this on the Joe Pag Show. You stay right here. Enjoy having Gregory Wrightstone on, that's for sure. Great guy, knowledgeable guy. He really knows what he's talking about. Your thoughts on what you just heard. And Greta Thunberg, it's exactly what happened. Greta Thunberg is out there pretending like she's the expert. The left wants us to believe she's the expert. When asked about her thoughts even for doing it and the impact she's having, she can't answer the question. She has no idea. Anybody else has something to say? She is a scripted person who was handed the lines, and I think her parents should be investigated for child abuse. I really believe that. And you don't have to agree with that. That's fine. She's not somebody who woke up one day and said, holy crap, I figured it out. Climate change is ruining my life. Let me go talk about it. She's skipping school at her parents' behest. She went to Portugal at her parents' behest, and she's making a fool out of herself. And she's like, nothing's changed. What did she think was going to happen? She would go to the UN in New York and give a speech, and then the entire world would drop to its knees and say, please, 16-year-old Greta, please tell us what to do. Please tell us how to solve the problem. Well, that's not going to happen, and she needs to grow up a little bit.